Postcard Row in San Francisco. Collectively, these 7 iconic Victorians are known by people all over the world as one of the city's most charming attractions. But as famous as they are from the outside, little is known about what life is like on the inside of these homes. Have you ever wondered who lives in any of those houses?
We were just looking that up, actually. Yeah. We don't have the answer yet, but we are curious about that.
Well, I often wonder how people feel, because when someone's always coming and looking at your house, it can be a little unnerving, but if you buy there and you live there, you must expect that it's going to happen, right?
That is, until recently.
I know there's one guy in there. I do know about the
tours.
Blue house.
Yeah.
He does tours, and I've heard he's really nice. I read an article.
We've never been, but I see him out there doing tours. He has like a little sign up.
In this video, you're going to meet George Horsfall. He's the owner of 712 Steiner St, the baby blue painted lady located across Alamo Square. He's going to take us inside his home, share stories about its historic significance, and offer a glimpse into what it's like to live in one of San Francisco's most famous houses. I'm walking up to the house right now. I think this is it. It's 712. I don't know. It's one of these houses. If you grew up in the 90s like me, you probably remember these iconic San Francisco homes from advertisements, movies, and of course, TV shows like this. But these homes weren't always so famous, nor were they so vibrant looking. It wasn't until a grassroots crusade known as the Colorist movement, which started during San Francisco's psychedelic era, that these houses transformed into the brightly painted Victorians they're known as today.
The painted lady's name and the phenomenon started in the late 60s, early 70s. A friend of mine, actually, Michael Larson, wrote a book called The Painted Ladies. He and his wife wrote it, and they basically just said it's like an old lady with too much makeup on. That's where they came up with the name. And there was no painted ladies. A lot of San Franciscans still don't really know that name, but that's pretty much more and more how they're become known. You guys have a peek over here. Go like this, and look right where the two houses meet. We're separated by 1 inch. So a lot of tourists in the park, I hear them saying that they're all connected up. They're not. You could tear one down and the other ones are just perfectly fine. They're all made out of 1,000-year-old redwood trees. It's all the old growth redwood trees for most of the Victorians and Edwardians in San Francisco. Old growth redwood is bug resistant, it's rot resistant, and it has some fire retardant quality about it. Not a ton of it, but some. If I tore the house next door down, my redwood that its face has been painted since 1894 would probably look brand new. It stays absolutely beautiful.
Even though Postcard Row is regarded as a quintessential tourist stop for anyone who visits San Francisco these days, they're not actually landmarks managed by the city. Instead, they're private homes owned by private citizens, just like George, who are responsible for their maintenance and upkeep just like any other homeowner.
We're in a historic district, and the only thing that's kind of protected is the outside wood. So not the interior, not the back of the house, not the paint, and I just can't change any of the wood on the front of the house. I could paint the house any color I wanted on the outside. I could paint it black if I wanted to. And I could probably tear every wall out inside without the city stopping me. So they're not as protected as you'd think. Of these 7 houses, this one, hands down, the inside is the most authentic.
Now, the Alamo Square neighborhood where George's home stands may be picturesque today, but the reality is that wasn't how it was for much of the last century. The neighborhood has gone through its fair share of ups and downs, beginning with the Great Earthquake in 1906. Following the quake, a number of fires broke out around the city, including one that went on to become known as the quote-unquote ham and eggs fire. It got its name after a woman who didn't realize how severely damaged her home was after the earthquake, decided to cook a breakfast that caught fire and burned down nearly a third of the city.
The park across the street became a refugee camp. As soon as it did, all the rich people moved away. And that was the beginning of the decline of the neighborhood. And basically by the 60s and 70s, it was really tough here. up until the 80s even.
In the 60s and 70s, safety was a problem in Alamo Square as high crime rates plagued the area. The neighborhood fell into urban decay because of this, and also because of discriminatory practices like redlining. This of course impacted the predominantly African American community that had moved there from the South for economic opportunities that came about during and after World War II.
These houses in the bad days, like in the 60s and 70s, were chopped up into apartments because nobody wanted to live in them.
But the neighborhood began to turn around in the mid-1980s. A combination of factors led to this, including increased community involvement from neighborhood groups like the Alamo Neighborhood Association, which in 1984 successfully got Alamo Square's 12 blocks designated as a historic district. Also, economic changes due to the tech boom of the 90s and 2000s brought more people to California who wanted to live in this colorful neighborhood. And lastly, a growing appreciation for the architectural and historic value of Alamo Square's Victorians is another reason for the area's revitalization.
You know, this neighborhood has a really vibrant African American history, and before that, a really vibrant Catholic Irish history, and a lot of very, very prominent Jewish families lived here. Like Isaac Stern, Yehudi Menuhin lived right down the street, the violinist, and a lot of the Citroens lived right behind us here. So there, you know, it was kind of mixed, a lot of Irish Catholic and German Jewish way back in the day, and then it became African American largely for a long point. And I think when my mom moved here, I think she loved the mix of everything, and you know that it was just kind of a mix, and it wasn't like completely rich people and it wasn't completely poor people. It was like just a mix.
Yeah. And
I think she loved that.
So how did George, a former history teacher by trade, end up living in one of San Francisco's most iconic homes? Well, George inherited the house from his mother, Catherine. A school teacher herself, she managed to buy it when she was 68 years old. When the house came on the market in the late 90s, early 2000s or so, Catherine decided to purchase it. A few years earlier, George had tried buying it himself, but his offer wasn't accepted.
Like 3 years later, my mom called me up. So that house you really want, it's back on the market. It's coming on the market. And she goes, "Do you want it?" I go, "No, I'm over it. I don't want it." And she goes, "Ha, I'll buy it, ha." And she did.
Buying the house came during a season of change for George's mother. She had just gone through the loss of a few close family members, and she also overcame cancer. To George, selling her old house, located in Ashbury Heights, and buying the baby blue painted lady in Alamo Square was a way for his mom to kick off the next stage of her life with a fresh start.
And it was a wonderful thing. Some of her friends thought she was out of her mind. It's like, why are you leaving this fancy house in a fancy neighborhood to come here? You know, because this, you know, it was much better than it had been, but it's not what it is now. And, you know, it was still kind of a little borderline. And she was just loved this house from day one. And she loved that it wasn't a house or neighborhood that would type you. Like she always used to say, like, I don't want to, you know, I love Pacific Heights, but I don't want a house in Pacific Heights because then you're like typed as a Pacific Heights person. Whereas this neighborhood, it's very eclectic. And I think she liked kind of being eclectic like that.
There are many Victorians in San Francisco that have been restored to look almost exactly like they might have been when they were first built. George mentioned that many of them are staged with period-appropriate pieces and furniture that were bought from all over the United States. But what separates George's house from other historic homes like this is that it's furnished and decorated with things that were collected by his family for nearly 2 centuries.
What's different about this house is architecturally it's the most in one piece of these 7. But my family has been here since, like I said, 1849. They never threw anything away. So this basically what you're going to see today is one family in San Francisco for 175 years. And it's all genuine stuff. You can look at my 1984 kitchen. Look at the view. It's hard to work in this kitchen with that view. You get a great shot of the City Hall dome. When the kitchen was built, it ended here. There was no sink in here. That was a doorway, and right in that little room there.
It's like a wet pantry.
Yeah, it was a scullery room, and the pipes were in that light well. We don't freeze in San Francisco, so all the plumbing's on the outside, and they call it Victorian stack plumbing because right underneath here is the laundry room, kitchen sink in that little room. You could fill a pot from this side or carry dirty dishes back and forth from the other door. Bathroom and bathroom. So this was originally a split bath for 4 bedrooms. So there's the toilet sink. Remember, everything is on the light well. So this little wall with the door behind this door was added to make a primary suite in the back of the house.
What truly brings his house and all the stuff inside it to life, though, are the stories George tells during his tour. The stories he shares about himself, his family, their long, lengthy history in the city by the bay.
This is my great-grandfather. He came to San Francisco in 1859. He was born in Cork, Ireland. I've seen his papers going into Boston. It said that he was mentally deficient and he was under 5 feet. So once he had food in him, he wasn't delirious anymore. He was fine, but he never grew over 5 feet. So we call him the little guy. And he came to San Francisco in 1859, didn't know how to read or write, so he became a bellman or a porter into 3 hotels. He basically, just like his son, got married when he was 45 to a much younger girl from Longford, Ireland called Katie Ross, a beautiful young girl. Here's the little guy, and here's his wife. She was like at least a head taller than he. He would be sitting every Saturday, this little 5-foot-tall dude, sitting in a room about as big as this. It was his smoking room, and it was decorated like the Casbah. And he'd be sitting there in a Moroccan fez and a Moroccan robe and a water pipe, looking mysterious all day. And they said his whole house looked like this. Word got back to the farm in Boston, to his family. He hadn't seen them in 50 years. And they go, we hear Charles has gone a little Californian on us. So they sent out the baby brother, he's like 50 years old now, to spy on Charles to see how far gone he is. And I think he knew what they were up to, and he put on a big show for them. So here's Charles sitting in his Moroccan outfit, fez and water pipe. But here's the good one. Look at the look on his brother's face. He looks like he wants to climb out of his skin. Can you imagine that man in San Francisco now?
Yes.
You wouldn't even notice him.
He'd just fit right in.
What's that?
He'd fit right in.
He'd fit right in. And they also have this lady, that's my Auntie Irene, that's their daughter. You'll see this blouse upstairs. She was born in 1892. She's my godmother. And when I got baptized, the priest scolded my mom that, why did you pick such an old person? She can't do her duty. She and my grandmother both lived to 100. I was like 40. So the guy didn't know what he was talking about. Probably one of the coolest things in the house is that lamp. So that lamp lit my family's home south of Market in 1860s. And it was a gas table lamp. The little guy died at 85 years old in 1925. His wife, the tall one, died in 1932. And their daughter, Auntie Irene, was so devastated she took the entire Sheehan household and put it in storage for 60 years. Everything, the sponge in the sink. She never went to visit it. A check came like clockwork every month for 60 years. Finally, when she died, my mom and I went to the storage place, and we went in and they looked at us like we were 2 ghosts. They said they didn't believe there was anybody even connected with it. It's just this phantom check arrived every month. So when we got home, it was like bringing home a time capsule. And that lamp, I didn't know how to convert properly a gas lamp to electric, so I just left it in the box. And finally last year, after all these years, I found somebody in the neighborhood here that knew how to do it properly. We just lit it. It's the first time in 60 years, well, 1932, yeah, more than 60 years, since 1932 that it's been lit.
When I decided to pursue this video idea, I was driven by my curiosity, and like many of you watching right now, I too was wondering, what's it like to live in one of those Victorian houses in Alamo Square?
Living in a house like this, it's not like living in a goldfish bowl at all. This is probably the quietest house you've ever been in. You'll notice that as you walk through. I hear on the tour every day, and also from all the tour guides out front, that the tourists love to believe nobody lives in these houses. And that leads to the only thing I don't like about living here. People block my driveway all the time.
For George, there are also 2 words that come to mind whenever he's asked what it's like to live in this house.
One is magic, and one is disconnect. When I fly into San Francisco and this pops up on the screen in the seat in front of me, it's like, welcome to San Francisco, and it's like a shock to me sometimes. That's the disconnect. We have huge tours here. It's a small one today, But basically, like last December, we had 1,000 people walk through here on the same day. A little disconnect thing. I'm walking through the Munich airport. There's my house on Anne Rice's book. Or right now, my house is on the new Grateful Dead poster. My nieces in Copenhagen went out of their minds. So if you come to the park January 1st around the New Year's Eve time, and again in June, we get Stonehenge. Just my house, nobody else. One day I came home from the grocery store and I pulled into the driveway, and there was a minister or priest with his back to my front door, the bride and the groom, and everybody coming down the stairs. I thought, oh, they're just taking wedding pictures. And I looked, it's like, no, they're getting married. So I snuck into the house and came up through the inside, took my camera and slipped it up in the windows. But there's stuff like that happens all the time. The way I know it happens even more is people have started leaving presents for the house. I've gotten everything from professional photographers' photographs, I've gotten cakes, I've gotten florist flowers, oil paintings, all kinds of stuff. And there's usually a note, it's like, we love the blue painted lady, or we love our painted ladies, things like that. It's really increased, like say, in the last 5 years.
Since moving into this house, it's fair to say that George's life has changed. It's unlocked connections to people from all walks of life he would have never imagined meeting.
When my mom died, London Breed wrote this to be read at her funeral. And I can say this with absolute heartfelt sincerity. Sometimes people, when hear me drop those names, they think that we're connected, and we're absolutely not connected. It's all about the house. And one of the things about living in a house like this, I tell everybody, don't confuse yourself with the house. Because they're coming here to see the house, they're not coming here to see you. They may like you when they've left, but they've come to see the house.
In a city that has gone through ups and downs in recent years, Alamo Square has remained one of the most enjoyable places and parks to visit in all of San Francisco. Locals and people from all over the world come daily, bringing in George's perspective a wave of positivity that he's grateful to feel every time he steps outside of his uniquely famous home.
It seems like almost every time I come out the door, there's some possibility that's there, and I'm open to it. And it's amazing when I look in the last years, the 23 years, that the amount of experiences and people I've met just because of the house has brought me clear around the world on things, and these great friendships that have gone on for years.
If you want to take a look inside George's home for yourself, you can. Every day at 4 p.m., George opens and gives a tour of his home to curious visitors like yours truly. It costs $30 for the hour-and-a-half long experience. To book your spot on his next tour, just send him a text message at 415-377-8559. You can also visit his Instagram or TikTok pages, which I've linked down below in the description, for more information. Hey everybody, if you're new around here, my name is John Santiago. I am the creator behind this YouTube channel, World of Nuance. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you thought of this video, and tune in for more episodes here on World of Nuance. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.